All right, so welcome everybody to our monthly Seed Saver Series talk. For several years, we did one every month, and then last spring we got busy with being back in person, and we kind of stepped back a little bit from our online talks, but we're excited to get back to our monthly talks, and we'll do a monthly seed saving talk. So tonight I'll talk about a couple of different elements of seed saving that we'll have upcoming presentations on. So if you're interested in seed saving, be on the lookout for those each month. We'll probably settle in. We used to do them like on the third Thursday in the afternoon. And then another regular presentation came up in conflict with that. So we'll probably pick a regular date in the next few months. But for now, just check our website and you can find the upcoming classes. So tonight it is, it's May, first week of May. And we're looking toward maybe some people have already done some planting for summer, but some people are maybe getting in their last plantings. Or if you're in an area of quarantine from the Oriental fruit fly, you maybe haven't started yet because you're holding off. So we'll address that too. But you're probably at the beginning of your summer garden. And so hopefully it's not too late to think about seed saving. And even if you like to start stuff or you have already gotten all your plants and some part of tonight's talk, that ship already sailed, so you can't really control that for your summer seed garden. It's just something to keep in mind as you're going forward. And then in the fall or next summer, you can make adjustments accordingly. So real quick, we're the San Bernardino County Master Gardeners. We are an enthusiastic bunch of plant people. We love sharing about plants and gardening and love to do research and like to be detectives. We have about 200 volunteers in our county. Each county in California has a Master Gardener program. There's national Master Gardener level and programs in every state. And basically, Master Gardeners are just here to answer your plant questions, where you can find us at events, at info tables. We work with schools and community gardens. And so that's where you can find us. And our goal is to get research-based information out to the public. If you'd like to become a Master Gardener, our next class will be in the fall this year. And we're probably going to go back to being in person. And if people live in the mountains or high desert, I think we're going to offer a hybrid option. And that may apply for the Inland Empire too. So we'll probably maybe be in person and online. Tentatively, we're going to be teaching classes on Saturdays from October to February. So it's about a 6 or 5 month commitment. And the class is a couple hours each week. And we'll try to tie in some hands-on element and some lectures. So if you're interested in becoming a Master Gardener, you can go to our website, and on the left-hand side, it says Become a Master Gardener, and you can click there and you can get on a waiting list to get the application when we send it out. It doesn't commit you to anything, but you can just be alerted when the application is out, which will probably be in about July. In addition to the Master Gardeners, we have a Master Food Preserver program. They also do free online classes and in-person classes. They have a website as well. So if you're interested at all in food preservation and dehydration, freezing, canning, we teach classes about drying herbs. You can check that out. And that's also a volunteer-led program that you could become a part of. So you can learn more about that on their website. We have a nutrition program, FNEP, which is similar to CalFresh. So they're in charge of nutrition education. 4-H is one of the programs that we have at our local cooperative extension office. So that's us as a team, just out there working to get research-based information out to the public. We have a helpline if you're not familiar with it. You can call us or email us with any of your plant questions. Also on the second Sunday of each month. This month it's the following Sunday because Mother's Day is the second Sunday. But each month you can just pop in online and ask your questions. So as you guys are seed saving, if you have just little things that come up and you're available on a Sunday between 11 and 1, you can just pop in and ask your questions and we can help you out, and then you can pop off. Some people turn on their cameras and show us their yard, ask questions about where to plant something or what's this disease or whatever. So, and then we can share resources online. So that's a great resource for you. And then you can also find us, like I said, around the community, and we're there to answer your questions. I always do a public service announcement about citrus greening disease. It is a disease that's fatal to citrus. It's not harmful to people, but the bacteria that causes the disease is fatal to citrus. The disease is in Southern California, and the disease is spread from tree to tree by a tiny insect, the Asian citrusillid. It's about the size of a half a grain of rice, and the tree insect will feed on one tree and move to the next tree and spread the disease that way. Once the tree is infected, it will die. So we're fighting with that, and you can help out. There are some websites where you can learn more. But a quick takeaway is just that you can help out by not sharing stems and leaves. The insect is tiny and the egg and larvae are even tinier. And so sometimes those insects, especially the larvae or eggs, could hitch a ride on stems and leaves. So I always see people doing community citrus sharing. I see a lot of people sharing lemons right now. And if you know anybody or you're doing that, just remove this foliage because the leaves can be carrying that insect. Don't share cuttings because even though the tree might look healthy, it could have the bacteria in it, and cuttings are a way that it's spread throughout the country from Florida, came in probably from Arizona into California on cuttings. So you don't want to share cuttings. And then you want to keep ants out of your trees. Ants are really interesting. They have a relationship with pests in the trees or in the garden. So if you have something that is a piercing, sucking insect, like an aphid, or something like that, an Asian citrusillid that drinks the juice of a tree or a plant, your roses, some lettuce, whatever it is, then that insect kind of becomes a straw for ants because ants only have chewing mouth parts. So ants can chew things up, but they can't suck the nectar out of plants. So the ants use these insects like aphids or the Asian citrusillid as straws, and they'll drink that nectar from their excrement and then take it back to the nest. And so they protect things like aphids. They'll protect the Asian citrusillid. So we call them bad bugs. You know, they're not really bad bugs, but they're harming our plants. They protect scale and other insects. So a lot of time if you see ants in your plants, that is an indication that you have another pest. So if you see ants in your plants, follow the trail, use the ants to help see where the pests are. Identify the pests. That's a great help. That's a great thing about our helpline is you could take a photo of the pest, send it to us, and be like, "What's this?" And our master gardeners will share research-based information that's like least toxic methods first. So you could send us a picture, but once you manage that pest, you also want to manage the ants because the ants will protect those pests from beneficial insects like ladybugs, praying mantis, syrphid fly larvae, other beneficial insects. When they come in to eat the aphid or the psyllid, the ants will throw them out because they want their little bug straws. So you want to manage those ants. You can put ant baits down, and you want to make sure that if you have trees, like the citrus, that you prune them up off the ground or away from structures so that the only way the ants can get into the tree is through the trunk to protect those insects that they use as straws. And then you can monitor the trunks, and if you see pests, ants in the tree, again, follow them, find the insects, and then put like ant baits stations around the tree. Let them take those ant poisons back to their nests, so don't kill those ants. And then in a couple weeks to a month, the ant population should go down. And that's the same for your vegetable garden. So tonight we're talking about seed saving. And ants do sometimes take seeds away. It hasn't happened very often, but I have seen cases in my garden where ants have carried seeds off. But ants live in the ground, and if you see them in your vegetables or in your plants as you're gardening and seed saving or pollinating or some pollinizing or whatever you're doing in the garden, then you want to manage those ants. So you can also go to the UC Integrated Pest Management site, and there's more information there. There's some sites I'd like to share with you from tonight's presentation, so I'll send an email to everybody who registered, and you can get a list of those resources. So you don't need to write those down. I'll send those over. So to slow the spread of citrus greening disease in Southern California, because Florida has almost no backyard citrus, then don't share fruit with stems and leaves, don't share cuttings, and keep ants out of your trees, and then spread the word, not the pest. I always like to show this picture because in the spring and fall, if you have citrus, then we get this citrus leaf miner. This is mostly cosmetic damage caused by a little moth here on the upper left. And then this is the symptoms of that deadly citrus greening disease. So this is asymmetrical yellowing here on the right. Doesn't look nearly as bad as the picture on the left, but the picture on the left is mostly cosmetic. So just so you know, if you do have citrus and you see this and you're not familiar, it is caused by an insect that burrows between the layers of the leaf, and it gives it this shiny silver appearance. Here's a picture on the lower right of that insect that spreads the deadly citrus disease. So yeah, Florida's citrus industry is less than California's for the first time since like 1946. And then they have like no backyard citrus. So this is a really serious disease. So we definitely want to take steps to prevent the spread of that disease. There is also a black fig fly I like to get the word out about. If you're in Orange County, San Bernardino County, the western part of Riverside County, they have detected a couple of these black fig flies, and you want to be on the lookout for this kind of damage in the fruit. And a good way to tell or to be alerted is that it will cause the fruit to fall when it's still green. So it will, if you see that, you can reach out to the Master Gardener helpline, or I can send the resource about that, just in case you have figs. And then if you are in this area, so this is San Bernardino County, here's Fontana and San Bernardino, the Cajon Pass kind of comes up through the middle. And here's the county line, just to orient you. This is the Oriental fruit fly quarantine, and this impacts a lot of our commercial growers in this area who are sort of the last people growing citrus, plus a lot of community gardens. A real big bummer about this fly. This quarantine is due to last into the first week of August or so. And next week I have a presentation with more information about this, but just know if you're in the quarantine or near the quarantine, you shouldn't be sharing fruit. Fruit really shouldn't be leaving your property. So I got lots to say about that, but tonight we're here to talk about seed saving. So I just want to share just little public service announcements. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer those at the end, or you can reach out to our Master Gardener helpline if you're concerned about your citrus, your figs, or you're in that Oriental fruit fly quarantine. That impacts over 230 varieties of plants. It's a lot. So that's a big one. So our talk today is about planning your summer seed garden. And I think it kind of like, when I think of success or goals or objectives, however, mission, vision, however you think that it should be categorized, to me, this sentence kind of summarizes success, which is that I have at any time, my winter garden, my summer garden, whatever it is, my native plant garden, I've grown viable seeds that I can hold over successfully that will give me what I want or what I expect or quote unquote breed true. So I think it really all comes down to this. This is success to me, is that the seeds sprout, that I store them successfully. I guess it wouldn't quite be in that order, and that I should revise that, and that I get what I expect. So let's break this down. I think it comes down to three different sections. And so just to let you know, I know we have a small group tonight, but feel free to raise your hand. I think that alerts me, or put something in the chat if you have questions, or unmute yourself as we go along. I have put together a lot of different presentations. We probably have done seed saving presentations for about 2 years. So, we've done dozens of seed saving presentations, and I've created a lot of content. So tonight I want to share it with you sort of like an overview. So if there's something that I say that doesn't make sense, or if you guys feel like I'm missing something, or you just have questions in general, feel free to unmute or raise your hand and ask questions. Okay. So I think it could be broken down into these three sections. The growing of viable seeds, that's one element. The successful holdover of the seeds, that's another element. And then getting what you want or what you expect, getting it to breed true. I think those are three different things. If you're on social media, you might have seen the meme that says, I've come to the conclusion, it's a few years old, but it says something like, I've come to the conclusion that buying seeds and planting seeds are two different hobbies, or buying plants and planting plants is two different hobbies. And so I think really like seed saving might seem like one hobby, but I think it really is actually like three hobbies at least. And on top of all these, it's research, which is fun if you like to learn stuff. And I think that's a key element to seed saving. There's seed saving. Why seed save? You could look at creating genetic diversity. We've really created, if you think about the thousands and thousands of plants out there, and I think in America, I think they say that we eat for the most part like 10 to 12 plants, pretty much like bananas, potatoes, corn, whatever. It's like 10 to 12, maybe 20. It's specific types. We are relying heavily on one type of banana that's having a banana fungus problem. And so we really have created like a food monoculture where we're just kind of growing very specific things. And a lot of people seed save to reintroduce diversity. I imagine a farmer's market, in the 1800s or whatever it would be, a local market. Maybe it wouldn't be a farmer's market, whatever that would be, a community market in the late 1800s or early 1900s, how different it would look in terms of the variety of produce that you would see. I think there's one movie, it's called Seed the Movie, and a really interesting movie. And they talk about the narrowing, of species from, dozens of varieties of tomatoes down to just a handful, and the winnowing of varieties. So some people seed save for that reason. Other people seed save because they want to have that sustainability or that independence where they're uh, growing their own seed and in that way living off of their own wits. And also, if you get good at seed saving, you can save money. People like to share seeds. So that's, can share that with that abundance with your community. And I think the other reason people seed save is just because it's a really fun adventure, and that they can research a lot about. And so I would say for all these three different pieces, viable seeds, storing seeds, and breeding seeds, each one has many, many layers of research that you can do. So let's look first at the growing the viable seeds. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go through these three pieces of it and just kind of give an overview of each one. Okay, so for viable seeds, basically a viable seed is just something that will sprout. It's capable of germination. When you plant it in the ground, it has what it needs. It's been fertilized, or it can reproduce so that it will grow a plant. It may be a sterile plant. It may be a plant that doesn't produce seeds itself, but it still can sprout. So that's not always a given. I grew carrots, and we're going to look at a chart in a little bit. And we'll kind of break it down from that chart. But I grew carrots one year, and carrots take, let's look at the chart. So I grew carrots one year, and the carrots take 2 years to grow, and the carrots to make seeds. So they'll take 2 seasons to make seeds. And so I had a little corner that I had my carrots, and I let them grow for 2 seasons, 2 years. And then I went to harvest them, and they were completely hollow. And they did not have other plants to make them fertile. So there was no seed inside the seed. So it's not a guarantee that when you plant those seeds, well, I'm finished with my story and I haven't found the chart. So we'll go back to the PowerPoint. But just because you're growing a seed, it doesn't mean it's going to be viable. So this is the guide. The Seed Savers Exchange is a company that that sells seeds, and they give you step-by-step instructions on how to sell seeds. It always makes me laugh because it shows you that seed saving is not super easy, because if it was, a seed company wouldn't tell you how to do it, right? So there's definitely like a technique to doing this, but this is a great resource. And I'm trying to talk and I'm trying to look this thing up. So we're just going to keep going. So a viable seed is going to give you something that germinates. And you also might get seeds that are viable, but not necessarily vigorous. So I've had some seeds where the germination rate is just really low. And it was like it was peas, for example. And so within a pea pod, I think a pod comes off of one flower. Yes, probably. And so I imagine that each pea within the pod should have been fertilized, but I didn't get them all to sprout. They were not all good. So just because they're viable and sprout, some of them doesn't mean that they may all sprout or that they may sprout and die off very quickly. I don't have a bullet point here on it, but there's something called dampening off where young seedlings die. And oftentimes with dampening off, it's caused by like a fungus or a pathogen in the soil. So that wouldn't necessarily be a failure for the seed viability. That may be something in the soil, a pathogen, a fungus that's causing that. And if you go to the UCIPM page, the UC Integrated Pest Management page, where I mentioned that we have our least toxic methods, um, for all different kinds of pests. Like they have information on dampening off, where I can't find anything today. What's wrong? Oh my gosh. Is this it? Well, here's an article about it. Anyways, we have something called quick tips. And so we have information, but this wouldn't be a failure of your ability to grow the seed. This is probably something that's happening in the soil. So that is as you are trying to make sure that you've created viable seeds, that just keep in mind that that failure, like if the seed does sprout, it's probably most likely something else, overwatering, underwatering, some sort of pathogen in the soil. And then, of course, sometimes there's snails and birds and other bigger things that will take plants out. But growing viable seeds is the first step. And I thought, like, with my, I had seed saved tomatoes and other plants, and I just always assumed if there was a seed structure there, that there was a seed. But the carrots turned out to have a seed structure, but it was hollow. There was no embryo in the center. So we're going to look at this chart in a little bit. And with the chart, you can see you may have to have several plants in order to get a viable seed. And also you want to keep your plants happy and healthy if you're going to be growing your for seed, because pests will get into the seeds. Sometimes we get a lot of cilantro with our seed library that people donate that has little bugs in it. But keeping your plants happy and healthy and inviting beneficial predators in, keeping ants out of your plants will help ensure that or help to reduce the number of pests you might have in your seeds. Because one of the things that can happen with a viable seed is maybe while you're storing it, with the cilantro, this happens a lot. And with the beans, it can happen where during storage, a pest that was laid, like an egg that was laid on the seed, might hatch in storage, and then it might eat the seed. So in general, you want to keep your plants happy and healthy and invite those beneficial predators in. So for the other things to think about for viability, or what's at the heart of viability, is you just want to make sure that your plants are getting pollinated by a pollinizer and or a pollinator. So a pollinizer is another plant that is needed for a plant to produce fruit. A lot of times when a plant needs a pollinizer, you see this a lot in fruit trees, but where a plant like an almond or an avocado or a cherry needs another plant of another variety to make fruit, and that may be needed to make a seed as well. And so that's another plant. And a lot of times you need a pollinator. So like for squash, one of the biggest problems with getting squash to make fruit is a lack of pollination by pollinizers. So that's going to be one of the steps that we'll talk about toward the end. There are different types. So on some flowers, you have complete flowers or perfect flowers. And those complete flowers can pollinate themselves. They'll have often male and female parts. Oh, and I forgot, there's one in the middle. So they'll have male and female parts in one flower. You also have two different types of incomplete or imperfect flowers or plants. And one of them is going to be, it's like a partially. So the plant will have male and female flowers. So a flower itself won't have male and female parts, but the plant will have male and female parts. And so that plant can self-pollinate. Some examples where they can self-pollinate very easily are like tomatoes and peas. Those plants can self-pollinate. And then there's some plants where there's male and female plants or male and female flowers. So that, for example, like an avocado, which you don't really seed safe from, but that's an example of a plant where it's gonna flower with like the male flowers flower at one time a day and the female at other times a day. So that does go into viability, and basically these things just factor in to whether a plant whether fertilization happens. Another thing that can be an issue with viability, and we see this a lot in our seed library, is that people bring in seeds that are not mature yet. So they've harvested them before the seed was fully mature. We get a lot of daylilies, which has kind of a pod, and those get brought in green. And if you cut those open, the seeds are immature. Another plant that we often eat with immature seeds are going to be like squash, cucumbers, and eggplants. We eat those when they're immature. So once you've harvested those, you can't save those seeds. So those are some things that can affect viability. And it's basically whether or not the plant got pollinated properly. So with the carrot needs a couple of carrots to make a fertile plant. It is not, I don't know what type of flower it is, but it is not self-fertilizing. So it needs other carrots. And so without those other carrots, essentially the seed formed when no embryo was not pollinated and it didn't create an embryo. So it was not viable. It didn't sprout. There was nothing there. And then if people bring in, or if you harvest seeds that are immature, then they're not going to have all their structures fully intact. So we're going to do, maybe not on this topic alone, but we are going to do an upcoming class related to viability, and we'll probably talk about also like planting distances. I think viability, one of the key things for viability is that when you're thinking about it in your overall seed saving, it comes in the planning phase. So if you already have a garden that's planted and midway through, you're like, oh, I wonder if I should save seeds from this garden. That would be fun. You can totally do that. And what will sometimes happen is that you'll be like, oh, turns out I only had one carrot that I left over and I pulled all the other carrots and it's too late now. Or you maybe you planted different types of peppers too close together and they cross-pollinate really easily. Or maybe you had a cabbage and a broccoli flowering at the same time. And so we'll do more on viability and also planning and spacing your plants. So that's kind of like, when you're still in the deciding state. So a lot of times this is a part of seed saving where maybe you step in and this part has already passed. But if you do have control over it, there are some things that go into it being viable. And when it comes to harvesting a mature seed, that's something you can control right up till the day you pick it, right? And you want to just make sure you're picking it when it's fully mature. So a fully mature dry seed, they call it, so a seed that's not in a fleshy part of a plant, a fully mature dry seed is going to dry on the plant. A fully mature wet seed is going to be, and a wet seed is a type of seed that's in like fleshy material. So think about a melon or a tomato or a berry. That's going to be a seed that they call a wet seed, and you process it a little bit differently. And that seed, when it's fully mature, is going to be fully ripe on the plant. So again, when we eat zucchini, cucumbers, any of those squash, the summer squash, eggplants, we harvest those when they're immature. So whereas tomatoes, we harvest those when they're mature. So if you are going to seed save from those other things that we eat when the seeds are still not fully formed, because you imagine a squash when the seeds are too fully formed, they're really hard and not appetizing at all, and the skin is very thick. So you would leave those on the plant. So anyway, stay tuned for a full class on that. So now the second piece, because these are kind of just like, just kind of giving you guys a sampler of what I think the most important things are. So the second piece is holding it over successfully. And this is pretty easy. And I think that when you think about a seed library, if you want to call it that, for your own garden. Or maybe you want to help your community garden get a seed library, or maybe you're connected to a school garden. Then it can be really simple as a shoebox. You can have just any place that's a cool, dry place, essentially. And, when we think about seed saving, and we look at the phrase, the second part of our what we consider successful, right? Growing viable seeds. So we kind of know what goes into that. And then we need to be able to hold them over successfully. So, when we think about what is the purpose of seed saving, I mean, because you could just let those seeds just drop onto the ground and, why aren't we doing that? And so there's a couple of reasons, and they're pretty logical, but it kind of comes into play when we think about what our goal is. And so, like, one of the reasons is that maybe, if those tomatoes fall to the ground and then they sprout again in the fall, they're going to be coming up and ripening in the winter and they're not going to be good. So we're holding them over till the next season. In Southern California, we definitely have warm and cool season times of the year for gardening. Both lots of things you can grow in both seasons, but definitely a different season. So like if we collect broccoli seeds, we're probably holding those over till the fall, or kale or cabbage seeds. We're holding those over till it gets a little bit cooler. And so we're basically stepping in and just taking a pause on nature. Nature has provided us with the seeds, and we want to hold those over. Another reason is that maybe we not only want to hold them over, but we want to share them with people. So that's another reason. So whatever we're doing, we're just putting on pause that process of the seed regerminating. And in order to keep it in pause and on hold, it basically just needs to be stored in a cool, dry place. Nothing too complicated. You want to make sure you prepare and clean them properly. You want to have the right container. And so if you have something that's airtight, you want to have some sort of moisture evaporator like a silicone package, or a lot of times I just don't put it in an airtight area. I mean, an airtight container, because in Southern California, we're pretty dry. If you're more toward the coast, you might have more humidity. But like in the Inland Empire, high deserts and mountains, it's plenty dry. So I have it in loosely closed containers, nothing airtight. We'll talk more about that in just a second. You want to keep it in the right place, something out of the direct sun, something that doesn't get too hot, either under a shelf somewhere, under your bed. And when you look at if you purchase seeds and you see that they're expired, what happens with an expired seed in a package is that the law requires seeds to be sold at like a certain germination rate, like 92 or 98%. No, I don't think it's 98, but like 92 maybe percent, so that, we're not getting bum seeds. So there are like rules in order to, and if the germination rate is low, they're supposed to tell us that the germinating, because maybe we want to buy unique or unusual plants where the germination rate is low. So we want those plants, but it needs to be marked that way. So basically, when a company sells those seeds, the expiration date is how long they'll guarantee the germination rate is at what they say it's going to be at. And so once they expire, they could be good for decades. Or before they expire, they could be bad because they were exposed to too much heat, or they might have gotten moldy or something like that. If seeds are going to be bad, a question we get a lot as the master gardeners is like, can they be bad plants? And pretty much like if a seed is bad, it mostly just won't germinate. It is possible for seeds to transmit occasionally viruses or other pathogens, but that transmission rate is relatively low. And so if a seed is not good, quote unquote, it just won't sprout. So a great way to test seeds, if you have enough, is to put a couple on a paper towel, put them in a dish, keep the paper towel damp. If it's a official seed package and it will tell you how many days to germinate, that's always good to know. Radishes only take a couple days. Onions can take up to a couple weeks. And I was really surprised. I thought the onion seeds were bad, but I just didn't wait long enough. So that's always good to know. But you can just test them, and if they sprout, you can try to plant them, cut them out of the paper towel, and just plant them with the paper towel, or at least you know that they still germinate, but they don't really go bad. So when you're thinking about the preparation and cleaning, you have wet seeds and dry seeds. Wet seeds, tomatoes, and cucumbers have a gelatinous cover over the seed itself. And so when you clean them, then you remove that so that they're cleaner and they're less likely to have molds build up. They also, that gelatinous part is really sticky, and so it really sticks to paper. So you can ferment those gelatinous layers off. For some wet seeds, like a pumpkin or a squash, you can just rinse them off. For dry seeds, you're just cleaning off that chaff and extra material, maybe a casing around the seed that can bring pathogens in. And so for either one of those, for the wet seeds, you want to make sure they're fully dry. For the dry seeds, you want to make sure you're not harvesting them when they're damp. Sometimes we have cool, damp mornings, and so those seeds can have moisture in them. If they are a little bit moist and you want to harvest them, just leave them out in a dish or something to dry naturally. So you want them to be fully dry before they're stored. In a seed bank, they'll actually do some climate control on the seeds where they'll dry them to a certain point. They put them in like a hood, kind of an enclosed area, and they'll decrease the humidity. And so they'll draw the moisture out, and then they put the seed in stasis, like it goes on hold. At our home seed libraries or community gardens, we're really just trying to buy some time by keeping them cool and dry and not encouraging them to sprout. For those dry seeds, you want to remove that excess chaff, and for the wet seeds, you're removing that pulp. That will help make sure that they are clean. And then again, put them in a container that's probably not airtight, or if it is airtight, you've got like a silica packet so moisture doesn't build up, and just want to make sure they're fully dry. And then some people put them in the freezer. And if they've got moisture in them in the freezer, it's possible that the moisture expands and they could crack and damage the embryo or the seed. So I usually don't recommend that. And a lot of people put them in the fridge. I personally think that there's a lot of variation in moisture in the fridge. Maybe that's just my fridge. I don't know. So there's undecided whether a fridge is a good place or not a good place. Some people think it's cooler, so it is better to hold over. I think the dry part is important, so I do not keep them in the fridge. So that's kind of a personal try it out. I do know that there's some things that off gas, like apples. I think it's ethylene gas or something, and they can inhibit some processes on like bulbs. I don't know if they impact seeds, but anyways, just things to think about. I store mine in a box that can't get any moths or mice, because that's my bigger problem, and just store them in a cool, dry place. So we'll do more about seed cleaning. That's a whole presentation in and of itself. On the internet, there is a ton of information which is misleading. When it comes to seed cleaning, I found very little misleading information. It's like pretty consistently good information. I don't know why, but it's great. So if you are interested in seed cleaning and you want to learn more about a particular plant before we do our next presentation on seed cleaning, then just if you like to do internet research, or you can reach out to our helpline also. There's lots of great information about cleaning tomato seeds, cucumber seeds, the fermentation process. There's lots of great photos. Again, we'll do a talk on it, but there is a lot of good information, and I haven't run across too much that's bad. And then when it comes to removing the chaff of dry seeds, this is something we've done for thousands of years as humans. And it's just basically coming up with a creative process to remove that outer husk that can attract pests. And also, when we want to plant that seed next year, we want that seed to be nice and clean. And so that just helps with storage, helps with longevity, and makes it easier when we do plant. But you're really just getting creative. You can put them in a bag and shake them up and have the chaff come off, and then blow into the bag carefully and blow the chaff out of the bag. You can drop it in. There's all kinds of different things. So we'll do a presentation on that if you're interested, and there's lots of great information out there on that on the internet. So the last piece, so we've got, we're planting our successful summer seed garden. We've grown viable seeds. We've done a good job on that. And again, I think this is in the wrong order, but then we've also stored them properly. So we grew them. Well, this is right. We've grown them properly. This summer, we grew them properly. They did great. We stored them over the winter. And then next summer, are we going to plant it and get what we expect? So that is a really big topic. And that is definitely one that can't be covered in just a little piece of a bigger presentation. Um, but, basically, this is when you're looking at becoming a good seed saver. This is where the biggest area of growth. So most people can grow a viable seed. With the carrot, it totally surprised me, but I didn't grow a viable seed. A lot of people harvest their seed when they're not ripe, so that kind of messes up what probably would have been a good viable seed. Seed storage, I think, is fairly simple. Oh my gosh, I didn't even say on the seed storage. It's not even in here. And you gotta remember, label your stuff. Label, label, label. I always forget to talk about it, but and I have a sheet. I do have it later in the presentation, but make sure in the storage success comes in cool, dry place that's pest free, and you've done some sort of minimal labeling at least. I can't believe I forgot that. So then this comes to the third part, which is so a lot of times people have a seed in hand. They've harvested their tomato or their bean or their pea, and they've got a seed in hand next season and they plant it, but will it give them what they want to get? Will it give you what you expect? That is the thing. So that is where seed harvesting and seed growing or success in seed growing is really two different activities. And success can be defined in different ways. And we'll talk about this. I think I have something about it in a little bit, but I don't want to forget. So maybe you want things to crossbreed. Maybe you want things to maybe you're intentionally crossbreeding things and you know what you're trying to get, like you're trying to get a kaleette is a cross between a broccoli and a kale. Broccolini, the little broccolis, those are not just baby broccolis, they're like other types. There's a crossbreed. So there's been a lot of brassica family, which is cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, kale. A lot of those things, they interbreed really easily, and there's some really fun offshoots for those. So people are intentionally coming up with they don't know what. So maybe what you want is adventure. And so crossbreeding is what you're going for. Maybe you want something that's an identical match. A lot of people, when they garden, they want something that's an identical match to the parent. And if that's what you're looking for, that comes with some planning and skill. And then there's the term breed true, which goes back to, and we'll talk about it in just a second, sort of quote unquote matching the parent. And this all comes down to genetics. Um, and this may be impacted by intervention on your part or manipulation of the outcome by breeding on something you're doing. And maybe that's planting plants close together. Maybe it is, hand pollinating. Maybe it's covering something when you don't want it to crossbreed. So maybe it's intervening by not allowing things to cross. And again, this is the biggest area. We definitely will do a whole presentation about this, about plant breeding. And so I don't want to scare you off if you're new to seed saving and think that if you don't know this part, you shouldn't do it. What you should just be aware of is that this is something that plays into it. And so if you don't get what you want, or you get surprised and you get something different that you really like, just know that all these things are going on in the background. There's a term, landrace seeds, and I'll put this link in the chat. Oh, hold on, forgot I changed my screen sharing, just a second. Oh, when I was screen sharing the other day, you guys can, the other day. When I was screen sharing like 20 minutes ago, I wasn't screen sharing and you guys couldn't see what I was talking about. Sorry about that. So there is a term landrace seeds, and this is a really interesting concept that I'm still learning about. And this is basically, I think this first sentence sums it up really well. A landrace plant is not a standardized variety. Rather, it's a bunch of plants, a bunch of varieties that have very similar characteristics. So essentially, you know, um, if something is bred to itself, like the same variety is bred to itself over and over again, genetic weaknesses start to become a bigger problem. So maybe disease resistance or maybe a characteristic about flavor might change. And it's essentially leading to inbreeding if you're constantly breeding the same plants together. So landrace varieties looks at mixing very similar plants so that to our eye, the plant looks the same, but the genetics have diversity in them. So this is a whole other topic. I will share this link in the resource page that I make for this presentation. But really interesting topic and a different perspective on seed saving. So if you're interested in because that is really like when you look at landrace varieties, they're really trying to make sure that you are keeping variety in the seed population, which will keep the population healthy and strong. So it's kind of in some ways, landrace varieties aren't the opposite of what we typically do, but a lot of times when you learn how to seed save, you learn how to really control the pollination. And with land race varieties, it's kind of a different perspective. So I'll share that link or look it up. It's a land race varieties. It does come up with a lot of land race cannabis varieties, but look for the land race vegetable varieties or whatever you're interested in. And so check that out. And so when it comes to the genetics as a gardener, saving seeds, why does it really matter? Well, it can affect the amount of fruit that you get. Maybe you don't get any fruit. I was saving peas, and every season that I planted the peas, I got less and less peas on the plant until finally the last one didn't even make any pea flowers at all. Like I had bred the peas out of the plant. I'm not sure what happened. Didn't work out. The types of fruit, maybe it's going to give you a fruit. Maybe you like the flavor of the fruit you saved it from, but it doesn't have the same flavor. Maybe it doesn't have the same texture. So the quality of the produce may change as the genetics come out from the seeds you save. And then it also can impact the ability to save seeds. I've saved seeds from plants, and then when they grew and those plants made plants, those seeds were not viable. So I had done something. I basically, that generation that I saved would have been like a sterile variety that could not, maybe that's what happened. So, and because I don't have a research laboratory and the ability to do genetic testing, a lot of this is done by observation and sort of knowing what goes into it and then figuring out maybe what went wrong through observation. So a lot of times you'll see these terms, heirloom, hybrid versus GMO versus open pollinated. And a lot of times these terms get thrown around, and I think that people don't always understand the maybe the definition as it applies to you, like as the home gardener. One thing when you do look at seeds, there can be something that is like, so if you have two parents, if you think back to like high school genetics, where you have the two pea plants, and you've got your purple pea plant and you've got your white pea plant or something, and then they cross, and then you've got a purple and a white. And then when they cross, the seeds that they'll make, it can be, maybe it's going to be purple. I don't know why I used all peas. But maybe it's going to be purple, maybe it's going to be white. You've got these recessive genes that may show up. So something may have a recessive gene and not match the parents. So if this is like a genetic a dominant gene, so maybe this is like a thick skin in the tomato that you like because it's good for cooking. And so you mix, and maybe it gets crossbred with another tomato, but when it makes its offspring, it's still going to show perhaps the dominant characteristic, which is that thick skin. So you're going to think, oh, I seed saved that successfully. So, but what you're seeing is that the offspring created something that you like, but maybe when you seed save that again, then you're going to find some of them have the thick skin, but some of them don't. So maybe you're going to find that genetic diversity. So this is a really big topic. Seed saving companies, what they've been able to do really well is really dial in these genetics in terms of knowing what they produce. So when they sell you seeds, they know where it's going to fall in this genetic layout. And so again, you can definitely save seeds without necessarily knowing what's going on. But a lot of times when we garden, if something doesn't work out, we think, did I overwater? Did I underwater? Did I not fertilize enough? A lot of times with fruit production, people think they didn't fertilize enough. And oftentimes it's not the case. And especially, and depending on what type of plant it is, when we get a question like that, I'll ask people if they were saving their own seeds, because sometimes in the seed saving, maybe the plant you're saving the plant, the plant will always make fruit that matches its parent, but the seeds inside that fruit may be different. So you have something that's phenotypically a genetic, like a match. So something that's phenotypically, a phenotype is like what you look like, or what a fruit tastes like. Those kind of visual characteristics. So a person with a blue-eyed parent and a brown-eyed parent, maybe that child would be blue-eyed, but they still have the gene for the brown-eyed parent. And so their children may have brown eyes. So like I had a blue eye and a brown-eyed parent, and I have blue eyes and my children have brown eyes. I'm showing the recessive gene, and my kids are showing the dominant gene again. But so even though my phenotype is blue eyes, I have the genetic makeup within me of the brown eyes. And the genotypic identity is going to be like the actual DNA. So one thing to note is when we are gardening and seed saving, we really are looking at the phenotype. We're not doing DNA testing. So as long as it looks and tastes like what we want, we can call it a success. So like when I talk about, like if I was to say like herbs were easy to seed save from, they often don't genetically match the herbs that you grew them from, but they look and taste pretty darn similar. And so we don't really care. So that's just something else to kind of keep in mind when you're thinking about, so if you have something that you can grow successfully, it might not be genetically identical to its parent, and as long as it tastes the way you expect it to, then that's okay. And that's where kind of the landrace seeds, that's kind of what they dive into. So just to look at the definition of open pollinated, hybrid, and GMO real quick. So open pollinated is basically just something that pollination is not controlled. It's done through wind, it's done through self-pollination, it's done through pollinators, something like that. So that's just what open pollinated is. And heirloom seeds can be are open pollinated seeds. Heirloom seeds are seeds that have been open pollinated and grown that way for decades. There's kind of a loose definition of heirloom. Doesn't mean pre-World War II. Doesn't mean some definitions say more than 30 years, but it's basically been growing, an heirloom seed has been growing in an open pollinated environment and come up with consistent results for many decades. But an open pollinated seed can naturally hybridize. So if you have two varieties of bell peppers, they can be heirloom seeds, they can be open pollinated, and they can cross with each other if they're close enough. So sometimes people get confused if they get an heirloom seed that like it's a guarantee that they're going to get a seed that will be good to grow again. And it's very easy for things to hybridize or cross in your garden. And that's where, going back to earlier in the presentation, we talk about planning the spacing. That's where that comes in. But it's basically open pollinated, means that heirloom pollination is not controlled. Heirloom seeds are a type of open pollinated seeds, but not all open pollinated seeds are heirloom. Hybrid seeds can occur naturally. They can occur with intervention by people. And so there's lots of natural wild hybrids out there. There's lots of hybrids where people are hand pollinating and creating that hybrid. But those seeds are going to come from two plants with different, two different varieties within the same family. And so you don't necessarily know when you save those seeds. I think that this naturally occurring hybridization is where most home seed savers end up getting challenged with not getting that last part of that three-piece puzzle, which is getting what you expect to grow. And then just to touch on, GMOs are genetically modified organisms. Up until a few months ago, there were no GMO plants available to home gardeners. But now there is a purple tomato, which is a GMO. And I want to say it's like a petunia or a pansy that glows in the dark that is a GMO. So those two things are available for purchase to individuals. Up until then, there were no GMOs available to non-commercial people. So when you see seed packets saying they're non-GMO, that was sort of a misleading statement because there weren't plants available. And then there's a whole saga with the purple tomatoes, but we won't go into that. Look it up if you're interested in GMO sagas, and look up the purple tomato GMO saga. quite interesting happened a couple months ago. But anyways, those are the two plants right now that are available as far as I know. There probably will be GMO plants available more in the future. And that's a really heated topic. And just know that just because something is a hybrid, it doesn't necessarily, it's not going to be, the hybridization can occur naturally. Crossbreeding occurs naturally. Genetically modified organisms, the DNA or the structure has been modified. So just wanted to add those parts. So what goes in a nutshell, a very complicated process that you can have a little bit or a lot to do with. What goes into making sure that something produces what you expect, or if you're crossbreeding, it gives you something that you're kind of looking for. You want to be watching the flowering. This is when all the action occurs. So when you're growing that broccoli, unless that broccoli is flowering, nothing is really happening on the pollination side. So when you're looking at making sure that plants are spaced properly, if you have a small yard, one of the things you can do is instead of giving plants space physically, because maybe they need to be 50 feet apart, but you don't have 50 feet to separate them, you can also control their flowering by maybe pinching flowers off, maybe by covering flowers to keep pollinators away if they're pollinated by pollinators. Maybe you are covering it with something else that will keep the wind from blowing the pollen. So the only time when you're looking at the genetic transfer of information between plants, it's all just during that flowering time. So to me, that makes it seem less intimidating because I don't have to worry about the plant the entire time. It's just during that flowering time. Get to know what plants are in what families because families can crossbreed. Some families crossbreed more easily than others. So getting to know those families will help you decide. Mind your spacing. Are they the wrong distance apart? Do you need them to cross-pollinate and they're too far apart? Like if I had carrots 50 feet apart, maybe that's too far. Maybe I need them to be closer. Do I have enough pollinators? For squash, we often have to hand pollinate if we don't have enough bumblebees. So you may be needing to help it out. Your pollinizers, those are other plants. Do you have those if they're needed? And then sometimes if you do like hand pollinate, and then you don't control future pollination, you could still end up with some crossbreeding. So a lot of times when people will hand pollinate flowers for seed saving, they will tie off the flower or put it in like a little gauze bag to prevent future pollination. Or you just do whatever, and when seeds come, you harvest them. But just know that all of this stuff has gone on. And if it doesn't work out, it probably had something to do with this. Like if the seed sprouted and you stored it successfully so that it germinates, and then you still don't get what you expect, things probably went wrong here. So we're going to do a whole class on that. I know it is 6:30. I've just got a few more minutes and we'll wrap up. So really quick, just to make a plan for your summer garden, here are some things to consider. What is your experience level? I'd say that factors in because if you are pretty new, I would definitely start small. If you have been doing it for a little bit, challenge yourself with a seed that people say is really hard to seed save from, like the brassica family, broccoli's, cabbage. If you're kind of an expert at seed saving and you just came to see what I had to say, because I do that, I like to see what other people have to say. Not that I'm an expert, but I like to hear what other people have to say. And so maybe challenge yourself and try something that's traditionally difficult and see how you do. Think about what are your goals? Are you just growing plants for your own seeds next year? Are you just wanting to experiment with plant genetics? It is a great way to get your mind off of life's troubles because it is a fascinating topic. Are you wanting to share seeds with your community? I feel like if you're wanting to share seeds with your community, you probably want to be a little bit more focused on the planning phase so that your seeds are going to give people what they expect, or just let them know, hey, this is an experiment, not sure what to expect. Do you have a storage place for that's pest free? It's so easy to create that. So don't let that hold you back. I have mine in a couple of shoe boxes and some coin envelopes, paper bags, and pill bottles, and it's pretty disorganized, not very well labeled. So the next bullet point, will you promise to document? will you write down stuff? That is a great thing to consider. And even if you won't write stuff down, that's okay. Every year you'll wish you had, and maybe one year you will. And if you're a great documenter and you like to like label stuff and you love to like do that, this is your time to shine. Other things to consider, like what do you have control over? Do you have control over the types of plants you plant? You might not. There's a lot of circumstances where I think we just get what we get. With our Master Gardener program, we get free seeds, but what we get is what people don't buy. So we get what we get. Usually we get a pretty good variety, but we don't always have control over that. Maybe you're maybe you're hoping this summer to seed save from plants that you planted in the spring. So it's still the spring, is it? Kind of, 2 months ago. And so maybe, oops, that ship has sailed. But that's okay. Just see what you get. Do you have control over if you are planting in the future? Do you have control over how close things are? Do you have a fairly small gardening space where everything does have to be kind of close together? That may be where you do some pollination. I have a class called Pollination Traffic Control. I think I put it on our YouTube channel, and where I talk about how you create isolation distances through space and time. Um, uh, Oh, and so do you have control over what is in flower when? Like, can if your neighbors are gardening a lot or you're at a community garden, you may have a little less control over what plants are flowering when, and you can't really like put a bag over your neighbor's plant or something. Are you able to intervene and do some pollination, or are you interested in that? So those are things to think about on kind of what level of seed saving. Are you the casual seed saver who just sort of is like, oh, there's seeds, I'll save them and see what happens next year? That's totally okay. I've had 30% or so success with that. Most of the seeds that I've saved casually without putting any planning into it have eventually petered out and not given me a lot of fruit. So I will say I haven't had too much tomatoes. I've had better luck. So the casual seed saving, it works, but the success rate is probably less than 50%. So how much time do you have for this adventure? And I always, if you have people to chat with about it or join our monthly classes, invite your friends to our monthly classes. Let's get a seed dialogue going on what your successes and failures are. And how big do you want to start? One by one is a great way to start. You could start with everything all at once, but each season I try to focus on something different. And some things, like I'm really good at saving mint seeds, but mint really propagates really well from cuttings. And so, I'm really good at saving a seed that I don't really want to take the time to grow, and they're a little bit tricky to start, oddly enough. So some things you may just decide, even though you can save the seeds, you want to save from cuttings. So this is my action plan. And again, I'll get you guys out of here in just a second. So this is my action plan, and I'll put this PowerPoint, I'll send this with my list to with the resources to you guys. But so basically I pick a plant like a tomato. I think, where am I in the process? Did I already plant the tomatoes? Is it too late? I'm going to seed save from them, but I don't really remember what varieties they are. Just note that. Look up what family it is in. And I put 3 of these things. This is where you just basically, you need to look it up. I have a resource to share. Then you just learn it and you just remember it. And this is just kind of like learning what families things in. If you like pick one plant at a time, then it doesn't take too long before you start to impress yourself on how many like, oh, that's in the brassica family. I'm really not good at plant names. I'm not good at scientific names and pronouncing them. I'm impressed with how many plant families, and it's just because I keep looking it up. I try to learn it and I try to remember it. So we want to look up what family it's in. You want to think about what other things you want to plant, because maybe this is the year you want to do a lot of peppers, or maybe you want to get really good pepper seeds. So maybe this year you only plant one type of pepper because you don't have a lot of space and they crossbreed really easily, and you really want those seeds to be successful. So think about what other things you want to plant. Learn when the seed is ripe, and where it is on the plant. Radishes come out like little green beans. I had no idea. Broccoli does too. And learn how to clean the seeds. And that's just a case of looking it up, attending a class, learning what it is, and over time you'll be surprised how many seeds you know how to recognize and clean successfully. Same with the pollination. Just look it up. reach out to our Master Gardener helpline, and eventually you're going to know is it insect pollinated? Do you need to hand pollinate? Do you want to prevent pollination? What is it that you need to do? And that's a great helpline question. You want to harvest those seeds when they're mature. You want to clean them, store them, make sure you document. I like to put when they were planted, what variety they are. Any comments about this plant? Like, was it vigorous? Was it tasty? Did I like the skin? Is there some reason that I saved that? Or was it just because I wanted to save seeds? And then put the date you stored them. And then I like to put what date they should be planted the next year. And important to try to get those seeds planted every couple of years. While seeds can last for up to like 800 or 1,000 years, they can also go bad in a season if they're not or they're not as strong after each season. So try to replant them every couple years for good, vigorous seeds. And then repeat, share, learn, and enjoy. So the Seed Savers Exchange that I pulled up the website earlier, and I thought you guys could see the screen, and then I guess you couldn't see the screen. This is a great website. Here there's some new videos, instructional videos on how to process tomato seeds, squash, peppers. So these are some great videos. And then they also have about properly storing the seeds, harvesting the seeds. And then they have a really great guide. We're over our time, so I'm not going to spend too much time, but I will send you the guide. And so I think, so this is a crop by crop guide. So this will tell you about germination, transplant, spacing requirements, pests and diseases. So how to save ground cherry seeds. So this is just a really great resource, and they have a chart that we'll go over on a future presentation that talks about all of the different how much space each plant needs, how much how many other plants you need. Do you need just one plant? Like with a tomato, you just need one. With a carrot, you need 5 for viable seeds. So I'll send a link to that resource, and we'll have a future presentation just about that resource. It's really great. Another thing that I want to share with you is this will be posted on our website, and this is a seed saving checklist. So you can write about the plant and some notes. So you could download these. We have another document for your seed saving library, for your seed library at home, if you're interested in that. And so just a real quick note on native seeds, and then I'll let you guys go. Native seeds, you want to, just like any edible seed, you want to harvest them when they're ripe. Most of your native plants are going to be dry seeds, but there are berries that are native plants. You do want to make sure if you're seed saving a wild plant that you're not seed saving from an invasive plant. There's a really great website, the Cal IPC website, the California Invasive Plant Council, and you can look up different plants here and see, or you could like reach out to our Master Gardener helpline if you think the flower, like there's this new one called stinknet. I think that's what this is. Really pretty, but it's an invasive species. So you could take a picture of it and either identify it on like that iNaturalist or one of those apps, and then just check, is it an invasive plant? And if it's not, then a lot of those are dry seeds. And even if they are in a berry, you just want to clean the berry flesh off and then let them dry out. But the trick with native plants is it's often so difficult to start the seeds. So the California Botanic Gardens has in their website, they have a very comprehensive guide under, where is it? Okay, their collections. Is it in the seed bank? If you go through their website, they have a guide on seed starting. So they have seed processing. No, that's the week. But they do, if you look in here, germination data and seed collection and storage guidelines. There's some information about starting native plants. So with native plants, you could just try to start them. Buckwheat is a fairly easy one to grow. Poppies, depending on, some of those are easier or not so easy, but some of them require like smoke exposure. Some of them require fire. Some of them require to go through the digestive system or an animal or to be like, um, you know, exposed to gibberellic acid, so they kind of fake that. Some of them need to go through a cold period. So native seed saving is another where it's like saving the seed is one activity and starting the seed is another activity. So we'll do a presentation about that in the fall about starting those seeds. And so just to wrap up, I showed you guys a seed saving chart that we'll post on our website and I'll share. And so just start small or just run with it. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Do your best to document and make a plan if you can or not. But attend our upcoming monthly classes. Email us with questions. And thanks so much for joining. I'm going to scroll through our link to our website. This is what our website looks like. And we have gardening videos and stuff on our website, so you can check those out. Here's our social media if you're interested in that. And then here is our helpline information. So I hope this basic seed saving class was helpful. I hope that sort of gives you things to think about. And even if you just sort of start this year by saving some stuff, I hope I've given you some things to think about if it doesn't work out or it works out really well and you get some crazy new thing that nobody's ever had. You can think about those things that went into play to getting you those viable seeds that you've stored successfully, that when they popped next season or when you planted them, that they give you what you expect of them. So you guys have a great day. Thanks so much for joining, and we'll see you next time.